Welcome back, everybody, to another thrilling episode of Thrive Shape Program with Coach 2J's. This is your host, Jeremy Jones, and today we're going to talk about peak intensity with adequate rest and how to explain this to folks so that they can get the most out of this workout, even though there's a lot of work or a lot of rest compared to the amount of work volume. And then we're also going to talk about this combination of deadlifts and weighted pull-ups and why it's awesome. So this workout today has 3 cycles. We're going to do 3 minutes rest between cycles, and we're going to do a set of deadlifts and then right into a bunch of sled pushes. And so this is, pure ATP. We're going to hammer people with this. It's a sprint type effort. So instead of having people do all-out sprints, we are going to do a 2-to-1 work to rest ratio with some moderately heavy deadlifts. It should be unbroken every set, whatever weight they're going to use. Probably, they should be able to do this with something more like 12 or even 16 reps. So it should be about half. They could easily and efficiently and safely do a set of maybe 16 of these before having to drop the bar right before their form starts to fold. So they should bang these deadlifts out in about 30 seconds or less, and then go right into these sled pushes. And we're going to go from a movement that can be a little bit dangerous because people start to get sloppy, but then we're going to tax those same muscles in the sled push with another sort of all-out sprint. So we're going to be going from that glycolic to the phosphagen pathways and just hammer people, and then give them a full 3 minutes to recover, so that they should be fully recovered before the next effort. Now, if done correctly, we're going to peak that intensity. So by the end of that 90 seconds, they should be slowing way down. So this is one of those workouts that it looks really easy because there's so much rest in between. But if they really hit it hard, if they use the proper load for the deadlifts, but then also they do those sled pushes at max sprint type intensity, they are going to be tired, right? So the first set, they're going to be a little bit jello-legged. The second set's going to be really hard, and then that 3 minutes may not even be enough. They're going to feel like it's not long enough. So that's what we're looking for with this peak intensity with adequate rest. And it's important that we point out to people that a lot of times, you could do this workout, for example, with 1 minute rest or no rest, and that's going to change the energy pathway that we're going to use, right? So, refer back to your training or whatever. But there's three primary, pathways that we're looking for, and the first one's only going to be, in that 0 to 5, maybe 10 seconds, and then it goes out to something like a minute or so. And they're not hard lines. And then it goes beyond, into the, aerobic pathway. And if you don't give enough adequate rest, then it basically turns into a more aerobic type effort. So instead of really taxing those peak power pathways, where actually people have to slow way down, and now they're actually just training a different pathway. And so what we want to do is really tax that peak power output in a safe way, and that's why we're doing deadlifts and then sled pushes, and then give people adequate rest so they can hit it 3 times. All right, so we've got Coach's Choice warm-up. You guys know what to do. Do something fun, do something different than some of our other warm-ups. Then we've got some hip mobility and everything because we're doing deadlifts. So it's probably good to bias that posterior chain to help people get in the starting position of the deadlifts when we're doing something like heavy deadlifts today. But remember, static stretching before heavy lifting is not a good idea. Research has shown that spending a lot of time doing static stretching actually weakens the muscles. So we don't want to do things that are going to tax the back or the hamstrings a whole lot, glutes in a static way. So think a little bit. It's okay to do some tissue work and do a little bit of stretching, but think more about dynamic stretching or activation work, which is where you're going to be doing firing the correct muscles. So one of the things you could do is X-band walks or hip circles. X-band walks are kind of fun because you don't need the special bands, but basically you'd have somebody stand in the band. This is their leg, and then they're going to and they're going to hold the band in their arms, and then the band is going to make an X, kind of like I just drew the torso, which I realize is probably a mistake. And then they're going to step to the side, right? So they're going to do, 5 to 10 steps one way, and they're really working those hip adductors to push to the side and firing the glute med and the glutes and everything. Have them kind of get into like a quarter squat to do these, and then go the other way. You can actually have the band go around the outside of the knee. That also helps activate those muscles correctly, and that'll really help them get into the proper muscles firing. You can also do single leg deadlifts is another where they're balancing on one foot and doing contralateral, so they're holding the foot that's on the ground that's working, and then they would hold the weight in the opposite arm. So if they're standing on their right foot, then they hold the weight in their left hand. Straight leg deadlifts are also really good for activating the proper muscles before deadlifts. And so think beyond just doing static stretching. So we're doing sets of 3. I like touch and go on these, but you can have people do controlled lowers, but without touch and go, where they have to reset every single time. You could also do, in general, I like to actually have people reset every single time. But when it comes to deadlifts, a little bit of touch and go is okay, so we get that eccentric portion. And then we're going to pair this with the weighted strict pull-ups or progressions. And one of the reasons why I like doing this combination as a superset is because there's a lot of compression going on those deadlifts, compression of the spine. And when we then hang from a pull-up bar, and especially if we hang from the pull-up bar and add weight to the lower body, we're creating that traction through the spine, which is going to help bring in nutrients and fluids into the discs, which also helps promote good spine health. So that combination is really good. Some people may notice it that after a deadlift day that's paired with weighted strict pull-ups, their back tends to feel a little bit better than if they just did deadlifts and maybe something else. All right, so locked and loaded. We talked about this already, but it's basically going to be 8 fast deadlifts and then right into some sled pushes. And again, if you take about 30 seconds for the deadlifts, then a minute of sled pushes is going to be pretty spicy. Now this is 20 feet out, 20 feet back, or 20 feet. You're going to count each rep. Now, if you have the high and the low sled pushes, you can just have people alternate high and low. If you have the style of sleds that is the same height, you can always do that as well. You can check out the sled push video on YouTube where I talk about different sled options. But I went ahead and wrote in here too. If you want to have people who maybe for beginners and things, or you don't have enough sleds, then you can have them just do a forward and backward run. So they're going to run forward 20 feet and then run backward 20 feet. Obviously, they need to be careful running backwards. But it tends to tax the legs in a much different way than just running forwards does. But it's gonna create the changes of direction is gonna create the effect that we're looking for. Ideally, we'll do sled pushes of some form or another. Now, there is a team version here. So if you have 1/3 the amount of sleds as you do people, so if you have 15 people in your class, you need 5 sled stations to do this. But it's going to be as many sled pushes as possible in 7 minutes. One person working at a time, rotating in order. So if you have person A, B, and C, essentially what's going to happen is person A is going to do the 8 deadlifts, and then they're just going to do 8 deadlifts, 8 sled pushes, and then person B is going to do 8 and 8 while person A rests, and then person C does 8 and 8, and then they're just going to keep going. So you can see here what we're effectively creating is another 2-to-1 work to rest ratio. Now, when the individuals who are doing this, they'll probably get more than 8 reps per round, but it's these people on teams of 3 will be getting a little bit less rest, right? So, if someone does 8 and 8, especially on the first round, that's probably going to take them about a minute, maybe a little bit longer. The second person is going to go about a minute, and the third person is going to go about a minute. Well, now this person isn't getting the same level of rest, right? So it's a little bit, it's going to be a little bit different, but it's going to be in the same sort of stimulus that we're looking for. And then that, of course, changes as people get tired, as they get tired. But that's one way to work around if you don't have enough sleds, or you have a huge class and you want to not have a crazy amount of people running back and forth, as written here. Or if you just want to encourage the team atmosphere that we get on our Saturdays when we do team workouts. Because it is a shorter Metcon, and I know that there's going to be people who want to do more, especially on a weekend, go ahead and have them do this this farmer carry 15 burpees for 3 rounds. Again, that's a spicy, especially if they go heavy with the farmer carries with something like 70-pound or 88-pound kettlebells plus 15 burpees. If they go hard, they'll get plenty of juice out of that. But of course, we also have the hypertrophy for people who want a little bit more muscular development. But that's it for today, guys. Thanks a lot, and thrive on.